Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? We're just continuing along here with some relationship dating advice that I hope's been helpful. And today I want to talk about how to unstick a stuck relationship. Because what happens over time in a long-term relationship is things that were once enjoyable about the other person often become frustrations. So there's certain qualities in their personality or just their behaviors that at first you might have thought were cute, and later on, as you kind of you're intertwining your energies and your daily outcomes and just kind of your life strategy starts to become connected, right? And so sometimes those personality traits create frustrations within the relationship for you and vice versa, right? If you've been in a long-term relationship, I'm sure you can relate and understand this. So if those things aren't moved, if you think of them like energy, right? And the way I like to communicate this is imagine a relationship is like a flowing river. And it's designed to flow and keep this nice ongoing movement. But what happens over time is these big logs or like rocks, let's just use rocks, get thrown into the river. And they're like these barricades, these blockages within the relationship. And if we get too many of those, the water starts to spill over, right? And go in a different direction. And, a good way to understand this is what often happens in relationships is we understand how good it feels to be in like a new relationship, right? We've all felt that excitement and just that bliss of like that new love. So what happens is when you're in a long-term relationship and you're not feeling so good, maybe you're frustrated about the relationship. It's natural for us to start to look outside of the relationship and think about another relationship being the solution to our sadness, our depression, our frustrations, right? Maybe you can relate to that. I think we've all probably been there in some levels. So, the I believe the higher level thing to do is to look at the mirror first. And so we want to look at ourselves first and the relationship dynamic first. Because if we don't, we're just going to repeat the same situation with another person. Trust me, I've seen it play out. I work with people, I've seen it play out. I've seen it play out in my own life. And so what we want to do is heal those things first, understand those things first, and learn how to get rid of those barricades, those rocks that kind of inhibit the natural flow of a relationship. So, one of the first things we can do, and most powerful things we can do, it's called the relationship mirror, right? And so the way this works is I'll just use some examples. So um, let's say your partner has difficulty taking action on like their career ambitions, their purpose. Maybe they work a job that they're just they're not very happy at, and for whatever reasons they just won't leave and go do the thing they always talk about. Maybe they always talk about like, I'd love to start a business, or I want to do this, and you're kind of like, yo, like, do it, quit talking about it, do it, right? So if we break that down and look at it rather than like a situation, right? So the situation is they're not taking action, they're not leaving their career, but let's bring it into like a word, okay? And this will help us kind of digest things easier. When we get away from the situation and we bring it to a single word, a single subject, a single emotion. So in this instance, we could say like, fear, right? They have a lot of fear and they're lacking courage. Okay, so fear and courage will be our words. So the thing to do is rather than just point at their fear and lack of courage, it's just going to create frustration in you. And typically, what you'll see in a relationship is there'll be opposites. So you'll be really good at that in that same dynamic area. So your career, maybe you are following your dreams and your ambitions, right? You're doing the thing that you want to do, and then it's easy then to see how they are not doing that, right? Okay, so that's why it's a frustration, because it's an area of extreme importance to us. And there's all different types of these things that are taking place within the dynamic of the relationship. So in this instance, this is something that's important to you. It's very important for you to be fulfilled in your career, in your life. And it sounds like it is for them, but they just have trouble acting out with courage and they're stuck in fear. So what we can do is we use the mirror. Rather than pointing the finger, the first thing we do is we use the mirror, okay? And we ask ourselves, where in my life am I lacking courage? Am I stuck in fear? So you sit with that for a little bit, a little quiet time, a little space, and you sit with that energy. And what you'll realize is that there's somewhere else in your life that you're exhibiting that same behavior. So maybe it's not in your career, but maybe it's your health, right? Your fitness. You haven't stepped out courageously. You haven't joined the gym. You've talked about it. You want to join this CrossFit program or this martial arts studio, whatever it is, right? But you just haven't acted out on those things. If it's not that, maybe it's somewhere else. Maybe you're not communicating with someone in your family or, your parents or whatever it is. I promise you, if you look deep enough, you'll be able to find an area where you're exhibiting the same behaviors. And so what that does, it just kind of, you can all probably feel it just thinking about it, is it just kind of releases the pressure. Like, oh, damn, like I'm like that too. And what that does is it creates empathy, right? And so then we move into out of our heads, we go more into our heart space, and we can communicate now through an empathetic heart. And that's the goal, right? The goal through communication is to communicate through an empathetic heart. If we stay in our head, we'll stay in our temporal self, our ego construct self. And oftentimes that sounds like, it's reacting communication. So they say something to you, hey, why aren't, I don't, if you would just do this and this, you'd feel better. And they want to just be basically like, fuck you. And then it just becomes a back and forth of fuck you, right? And so you've probably all felt that. So the better thing to do is when we communicate through our heart, we have empathy. It's empathetic state, right? And so we can say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I've really struggled in, my own, we're going to use that health and fitness example, in pursuing my goals to be healthier and more fit and more vibrant with my energy. And it's hard. I have a lot of fear around that. It's difficult for me to be courageous. And, I just want you to know that I know something that's heavy on your heart is your career ambitions. And I see you in that. And maybe if you ever want to, if you're interested in it, we can hold each other accountable and we can move through that space. Notice the difference, right? Now we're working together in the relationship. And going back to our example of the boulders in the water, the rocks in the water, one of those just got moved away, didn't it? Now the water's flowing, right? That water's flowing. And so again, if you're in the relationship long enough, there'll be another situation that comes up. A little kombucha, you know what I mean? Keep things moving, keep things flowing. So there'll be another situation, the relationship that comes up. Maybe it's around whatever, who knows? But the goal with this is when you see a frustration is to go inward first. And what happens is then the entire relationship becomes a teachable moment, right? The other becomes your teacher. And that dynamic in itself removes frustration. Think about it, right? If this other person is just mirroring back to you parts of yourself that you can improve, that you can heal, that can take you deeper into yourself, you are going to let so much go. And also, you're going to continue to grow and expand within the relationship. Think of relationships like this. They don't move on a linear progression. It's the way we think. Our human brain wants to be like, time, 9 to 5s, 24 hours in a day, stuff like that. But relationships don't move like that. They move kind of like a DNA strand. We move close towards each other, but we're always growing. We're always changing. And so sometimes we drift out and we move back in towards each other. So they're kind of always doing this helix pattern, right? This in and out, this DNA looking type thing, moving away, moving close. And so our goal is to understand that at times, the other person's going to be in their own space, pursuing their own things, and to encourage that, to bring life to that. And also, not to point at it, to make it a frustration. Oh, we can easily push that person too far off, right? We create space, we create allowance and permission for the other to be who they are. Like that's a beautiful thing, just allowing them to be who they are. Because if we don't use the mirror, we're going to point at a lot of parts of who somebody is that they don't necessarily have control over. And how would you like that? Right? Like I felt that in my life, people have pointed at certain parts of me. And at first I'd be like, oh, yeah. And I would kind of carry it and wear it. And I don't know what to do. And I'd start to feel bad. But later on, I learned like, yeah, this is just how I kind of roll. This is just who I am, And also if something needs to change, if I can improve something and it's causing a lot of challenges, I'll own that. I'll step into that. And also just be aware of this is kind of how I show up in life, Some parts of it I really enjoy, some I don't. Some they're frustrating for me too. Like the example of this person who, you know, maybe is having difficulty being courageous in their career ambitions. They're very aware of that. This is a frustration for them too. So by us pointing at it, it's only going to make it worse. It's only going to weaken them. But if we can find aspects of ourselves to grow and improve, it's going to also boost them up. And then it makes us easier to notice when they do make little steps, little baby steps towards it. And all we have to do is just encourage them. Hey, way to go. Awesome. Oh, man, I love seeing you do that. It was really cool watching you study that video about starting a business or whatever it is, right? And just let it go. Just leave it. Give them their own space. Because we want our partners ultimately to grow in their own strength and their own power. Like that's going to feel so much better rather than us trying to control something, right? I talked about this. I did like this live breathwork event yesterday, and that's one of the medicines that I share is breathwork medicine. And if you haven't had a chance to check out my stuff, definitely check it out. TroyFontana.com or thebodhimethod.com is where I share that stuff, more of that. But I was at this live event, and I talked about if you want to achieve something, are you going to go after it like this? Like, let's say I want some water, and there's a little pond right there. Am I going to grab that water and squeeze it? If I do, am I going to have any water in my hand? No. But if I grab it gently and loosely and cup it in my hand, will there be water in there? Yeah. So we hold our relationships, our goals like that, loosely. We just cup them. We don't need to smother it, squeeze it, right? And that's often what takes place in a relationship is we want the other person to be somebody that they're not so bad that we squeeze the relationship. And I know I don't want that. Like I've felt that before and it feels awful. And also, I don't want to do that to another person. So give them space to be who they are, encourage who they are. If there's things that you just can't get over, absolutely communicate. But again, the goal is to communicate through the empathetic space of our heart, right? Because this isn't denial. Like you can't deny the things that you feel, or then you're going to build resentment, right? We don't want that. You build resentment in a relationship. At some point, it's going to show its head, right? So we want to communicate. The whole goal of the mirror is to bring us into ourselves and also to be able to communicate those frustrations, but only through the empathetic space of our heart, right? So as there are frustrations, you use the mirror, you feel it, you find where you carry that same energy, and then you can communicate to the partner or the other through that space. And some goals, like just some rules that I share with people, there's no judgment when you're communicating these things. So if they say, well, I feel like this, be really careful of pointing the finger at it. Just listen, just hold it. And also when you communicate, try to use words that embody emotion. So say things like I feel, and share the whole story. And you can say something like this. So around the career ambitions, right? You can say, hey, I just, what I see is when you are afraid to do these things, it makes me afraid that one day you're going to give up on yourself. And that's what I saw in one of my parents. And that did X, Y, and Z to my mom or my dad, right? And it made me feel this way. So I still carry some of that energy. And so I just want you to know that's, if you sense anything in me, that's kind of what it is. But I want you to know that I want to change that. You're not my parents. You're a different person. I understand that now, and I'm here to help. And also just be aware of some of the fears that I carry in this. And maybe we can work together and move forward from that space. How's that sound? A lot better, right? We're working together in these things. So yeah, I know not everything works just perfectly. In fact, this stuff works quite the opposite from perfectly most of the time. But just understand that. And you can also honor that. You can hold space for that. Like things don't just move in this smooth and easy manner, right? But just remember that if we learn these things, if we understand relationships better, ourselves better, not only can we heal this relationship, and if this relationship isn't the right one for you, ideally it will heal the next one, right? But we don't want to create a scenario where we're just going from one relationship to the next and just kind of living on those highs of the relationship that last, 3 months, 6 months, a couple years, right? And then looking for a new one. So this is a way to take you deeper into yourself, to unpack the relationship a little bit more. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'd love to hear from you. Drop some comments below. Let me know if there's any other topics that are really, standing out for you that you'd like to hear about. I've learned this stuff just kind of through my own life, and spending a lot of time just going inward, unpacking these exact things that we're talking about. And also now, coaching and sharing with other people in my daily practice. So much love to y'all. Until next time, peace.